CEO Philip Daffas has held senior global business leadership positions in Europe, the US, and Australia. He's been instrumental in building global medical device businesses in the cardiovascular, diabetes, hearing impairment, and pathology sectors. Roles with Cochlear have included European Sales and Marketing Director based in London, prior to being promoted to Vice President Global Marketing based in Sydney. Philip joined Roche Diagnostics initially in the UK, managing their diagnostics business, and subsequently was promoted to Global Marketing Director for the diabetes care business based in Mannheim in Germany. Please welcome Philip Daffas.
Thank you, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here again. Nice to see people face to face for a first time in a very long time. I'm sure everyone around this room understands the complexity and the difficulty of assessing pain. But I just want you to stop and think for a minute about how difficult it is to assess pain for two very vulnerable groups. Firstly, those people living with dementia and cognitive impairments who may be in an aged care facility or at home, and who have suffered and have lost cognitive cognition and are not able to reliably verbalize or communicate their pain. The second vulnerable group are pre-verbal children. These are children between the age of 1 month up to 3 years of age who've not yet built those communication skills. And in these cases, for both of these groups, it's quite complex. What can happen very often is that pain is underdetected and undertreated, or in some cases, pain is actually misdiagnosed and thought to be something else and then mistreated. Our goal at PainChek is simple. Our mission is to give a voice to those people who cannot reliably verbalize their pain. And what we've developed in the past few years are two devices, two medical apps that come digital technologies that come in the form of an app that actually assess and documents pain for those two vulnerable groups. There's an adult version which assesses the pain for the elderly, and there's an infant version just recently released which assesses pain for infants between the age of 1 month and 12 months. These are all digital technologies, but they're all medically regulated and they're all cleared by regulatory authorities. The size of the market, the size of the opportunity is significant. There's 57 million people in the world living with dementia, and that's predicted to go up to 150 million by the year 2050. People with dementia occupy up to 1/3 of hospital beds at any one time. So if you think about the situation with dementia, people are living between home care, aged care, and hospital care. And those three markets are big opportunities for the PainChek technology. On the other extreme, there are 400 million pre-verbal children in the world at any one time. So children's actually dwarfs the dementia product or the adult product. And we see a very big opportunity with the kids products for home care use, for mums and dads to assess pain for their children at home as they would do temperature or other vital signs. So we started our journey with aged care. And the reason why we started in aged care, because that's where pain is a real issue. Or pain assessment is a real issue. 50% of people in aged care have dementia, and 80% of people in aged care suffer with chronic pain. So what we did in the first instance, we looked at the legacy assessment tools. A lot of tools out there, paper-based tools, been out there for many years that shows you how to assess pain for these people. What we did is we took those old tools, which are rarely used because they are very subjective, very complex to use. We intelligently automated the whole process and put it into a modern day app and digital technology. But most importantly, we also brought in artificial intelligence. We brought in AI for the use of camera technology to assess the most complex part of the assessment, which is assessing the microfacial features of pain that somebody like that would exhibit at any one time. What that means is that we eliminate all paperwork. We have more data points to assess pain. We log all pain scores. Every single pain assessment we do, we log and store on our database. We're actually creating the largest pain database in the world. And we integrate with all the clinical systems out there. All the clinical systems used in aged care or in home care, we've integrated with, so therefore you get seamless delivery of the pain assessments into the care management or the medication management process. We started this process in 2017-18, and I want to report a little bit about how we've done so far with the adult technology. The other thing we did in the process is we were told by our clients who actually really liked the product. They said, we love your technology, the PainChek app, we love using it in aged care. But they said, but we want one tool to assess all pain. So for those who can't verbalize, use PainChek, we want PainChek to use and document the other people who can verbalize their pain. So we've now converted the PainChek technology into a universal pain assessment solution for all people in all situations. This is a short video I'm going to run now of how PainChek works. Turn the sound up, please.
Today, we'd like to talk to you about the next step in the evolution of pain assessment, the PainChek Universal Pain Assessment Solution. The PainChek Universal Solution allows for the assessment of those who can't reliably self-report their pain, those who can reliably self-report, and those who fluctuate between the two states. The PainChek Pain Assessment Scale has become the new standard in observational pain assessment, giving a voice to people who cannot articulate their pain. Using AI technology to support a modern assessment framework, PainChek will identify the presence of pain even when it's not obvious. For those who can reliably articulate their own pain levels, it's essential that regular pain assessments are conducted via interview, by simply asking how much pain someone's in. To support this, PainChek has incorporated a numerical rating scale, or NRS, into the PainChek application. For many people, cognitive state and ability to reliably report pain will fluctuate day to day or even hour to hour. In these cases, your team will be able to select the best assessment tool to use right at the point of care. With PainChek Analytics, data is presented in real time through tailored dashboards to inform and empower clinicians as they make crucial clinical decisions on pain management. The new Universal Pain Assessment Solution combines the unique PainChek assessment with the NRS Pain Scale and PainChek Analytics. It improves clinical processes through a fully digital product, training, and documentation system. For more information about PainChek, send through an inquiry via PainChek.
Areas we focus on. Firstly, we have our enterprise license, which is really focused on healthcare professionals. These are annual licenses for hospitals, for care homes, for home care and primary care. And that's mainly targeted to those healthcare professionals. The other area is for home carers, and that's most targeted to directly to mums and dads or personal home carers, for example, looking after their children or looking after their loved ones in the home environment. And that can be supplied via the Google Play Store or through pharmacy services and retail stores. We're focused primarily on the healthcare professional side in the first part of our journey. This is a summary of our revenue paths to date. We have close to over 36,000 beds now actually on license, on annual subscription licenses, just under $2 million in ARR. That's on the left-hand side. If you look on the right-hand side, we've actually got a total of about 4.2 million clients contracted, some of which are already commercial, some are commercial but not implemented and therefore not recognized, and some are coming off a government grant that we were awarded by the federal government 2 years ago, where the government wants to accelerate the use of PainChek in aged care, so they help fund this process. So in total, we've got over 90,000 beds, something like close to 1,000 aged care facilities across multiple markets, and a 4.2 million ARR. The other thing we've got is we've trained around 10,000 carers in aged care. We've got 1.7 million plus pain assessments now documented onto our back end, which means gives us the largest database in the world. And we've got a strong sales pipeline in multiple markets. If you look at the actual market sizing for this, so we've got two markets here. We're looking at global aged care and home care. We see the aged care market being worth around a $300 million market opportunity. And the home care market, this is where more and more people are being treated at home and governments are setting up systems for home care. We see that being potentially 10 times the size of the aged care market as that comes to fruition. As part of our process, we integrate with care management systems and medication management systems in multiple countries. We've now got more than 30 partnerships with these companies who've integrated PainChek into their modules, allowing for seamless delivery of pain assessments and for better pain medication management. These cover about 1.5 million beds in total on those different markets covering Australia, UK, New Zealand, and North America. I've spent quite a bit of time this year in the UK as the markets opened up. We're now progressing very well in the UK. We've got close to 10,000 beds under license. We've got government-funded pilots in Scotland and Wales that could move to 100,000 beds, and we've got very strong sales in England through Care UK and Cedar Care. So the UK market's really picking up, and it's a 400,000 bed market, which is twice the size of Australia. One of our care homes is Orchard Care, and you see a quote here from Cheryl Baird, the Director of Quality, about the impact it's had. And I want to go a bit more detail on this, because this is really important. At Orchard Care, we implemented PainChek across 24 aged care homes and 1,300 aged care beds. What we saw as outcomes were pretty significant, and these are being reported now and will be published. We saw a 100% increase in pain assessments, 50% increase in the number of residents on regular pain relief, and 50% reduction in distressed behaviours for those people in aged care. So significant pain management improvements, but we also saw significant medication and quality of life improvements. That includes a 33% reduction in the use of antipsychotic medication, which, as you know, should not be used unless it's necessary. A significant reduction in benzodiazepines, which is a tranquilizer of sorts, and 92% in the quantity of safeguarding report incidents. So these are really making a significant impact in aged care in the UK, in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and about to go into Canada. But this is one example of the benefits of PainChek. The US is a very important market for us. We haven't got regulatory clearance there yet, but we have just done an agreement with a company called PointClick Care. They dominate the aged care market with their care management and medication management systems. They are now integrating PainChek into their system, and they cover more than 1 million beds, 1 million aged care beds in US and Canada. What we're doing now with them, we are integrating the product now. We are piloting in Canada, where we do have regulatory clearance in this before the end of this year, and we'll start in the US when we get FDA clearance, which is towards the end of next year. But in the meantime, we've got processes in place and meetings in place with all aged care facilities that they work with in the US to fast track our US penetration. This summarizes our global aged care market strategy. I've covered most of this, but as you can see, we are really a global business. ANZ, UK markets, the UK would be the base for Europe, and as I say, we've got established a nice base in North America. So global business all stemmed from Australia. I'm going to talk a bit about the hospital sector now, because we see a big opportunity in hospitals where the problems are similar to what we see in aged care. People with dementia typically stay in hospitals for 18 days longer than the average patient. They have an increased risk of delirium, 3 times increased risk of delirium, which means if you have a delirium in a hospital, you end up in an intensive care unit. And they have a high use of antipsychotics. Similar issues you see with the dementia in hospitals, and these are all significant issues. We are therefore looking to bring PainChek into the hospital sector as a point of care pain assessment tool to actually help reduce those risks of a delirium, to improve and optimize therapeutic treatments, and to reduce the number of days stay in the hospital. Now, to be successful in the hospital, you need a partner. You need a partner with an EMR, electronic medical records, and these are global players. Well, I'm pleased to announce as of today, we just announced a partnership with InterSystems. They are a global provider of EMR systems, electronic medical records. They cover more than 1 billion health records globally. And they're going to be integrating PainChek into their system to allow us to fast track our opportunities with the hospital market. This agreement covers both our adult products and our infants, and it can be extended into the home care market. So this integration with their interoperability system is key to entering the hospital market. And that's just announced literally today. Finally, on the infant product, We've got regulatory clearance on the infant product. We are assessing now the utility of this product as a procedural pain technology for kids up to the age of 12 months. We're looking at post-vaccination, post-operative, and partnerships and licensing. In fact, that last one area is really, really important because we see an opportunity to work with therapeutic companies, because just at the bottom there, the FDA have just announced that they're funding Duke University to develop and to find an effective measure to assess acute pain in infants and children. There are no measures today. We are, I think, the only company in the market doing that. So I'm going to finish off. I've got 20 seconds. Large opportunity with infant market. If we've just got 1% of the global infant market, that's a $300 million market opportunity. And it's mostly consumer. Strong management team, been there for 4 or 5 years. We've got a very effective board. Introducing Cynthia Payne, who's a healthcare and home care specialist. And finally, 40 million market cap company, no debt, and well financed, about $7 million in the bank now. So I'll hold it there. Thank you very much.
Jennifer Chow is the CEO and MD of Chimeric. That's the company, Chimeric Therapeutics. Jennifer is a cell therapy pioneer and expert with experience developing and commercializing FDA-approved CAR T cell therapies. She also has experience leading the commercial development for more than 15 pipeline cell therapies. She joined Chimeric from Kite Pharmaceuticals, where she was the head of global marketing, analytics, and commercial operations. And prior to that, was global cell therapy commercial lead at Celgene Corporation. Please welcome Jennifer Chow. Hi. Oh, I have her down. So, what do you think is next? Oh, genetics. Didn't see that. Okay, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen, but I am missing an introduction. However, the man who's going to present this next presentation will most eloquently do his own presentation introduction. Please make him welcome.
Well, that was an introduction. Always a pleasure to meet new investors, potential investors, to talk to you about genetic signatures and our technology. I always like to frame genetic signatures. We are a technology company. We've developed our own technology, invented here in Australia, in Sydney. And that technology is designed to better detect infectious diseases. So that's what we're focused on. Infectious diseases because they're a leading cause of death, but importantly, they're preventable. If you can diagnose it more quickly, more accurately, you can commence treatment. Equally, if there's no treatment, you can isolate. Ultimately, you save lives. So a paper came out just last week, which estimated that antibiotic-resistant bacteria, it's a class of bacteria, causes 5 million deaths a year. So that's almost 10 a minute. So by the time I'm done here, there'll be 150 deaths around the world that are due to just this one class of bacteria. And we've got viruses, etc. after that. It's not a third world issue. Even the US has 1 death every 15 minutes based on these antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And they estimate by the year 2050, it will be the leading cause of death, overtaking cancer. So it's in that context that Genetic Signatures has developed a technology we're incredibly proud of. We call it 3-base, and it's a really fresh way of detecting infectious diseases. It dramatically simplifies the ability to detect multiple organisms in the one patient sample. It's what we call multiplex. So 3-base allows more information to be reported back to the doctor, and we do it in a simpler way than anybody else. We've had strong commercial adoption of our tests, and this is within Australia, but also now into Europe and the US, which are our target markets where we're expanding into. So we have 4 diagnostic tests that are cleared in at least one market, and we have 5. We have had strong revenue growth. Last year was our record 35 million. We're cash flow positive, 6.7 million, and we're profitable. As a snapshot, market cap's about 109 million. We have 32 million in cash, giving us an enterprise value of 76. So that is correct. We have almost a third of our market cap in cash, which probably speaks more to the price, but we have had some recent reports with a target price well above where we are at the moment. In terms of shareholders, Chris Abbott from Maple Brown Abbott was a co-founder. He founded us some 21 years ago, which is why he speaks for about 26% of the company. But we're all delighted to have the likes of Perennial and Felity on the register. I've talked about the revenue growth. You can see it here graphically, strong growth since we listed. Our 4-year CAGR is 89%. The last quarter reported was 16% up from the prior preceding quarter. But what we're seeing now is a growing contribution from the international sales. And that's really leveraging the experience we've had in Australia. And that allowed us to have some COVID screening sites into Europe. And they are now transitioning away from just looking for one organism, SARS-CoV-2, and looking for a broad range of organisms that can cause the same symptoms. We're active in the US, where we've just finished recruitment of a clinical trial, which will be used to go ahead into our first FDA application. So we did pivot fairly quickly. At the beginning of the pandemic, obviously, we've been around a long time. We were detecting the common coronaviruses then. It was an easy pivot for us, and we did well. But as you've heard today also, COVID screening is pulling back. It's not going away. It's simply becoming an extra target to look for. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing that those new customers that we've put on over the last 2 years are transitioning. They've only got a very few who are doing COVID only now. They're doing more broad screening for the greater respiratory targets and enteric targets. And we've embedded the technology in workflows that are very high throughput. So we don't look, sorry, I should say that our customers are the pathology labs. They buy our test kits and they perform them on patient samples. And we've designed it to be high throughput. So hundreds of patients a day or thousands of patients a day, up to 10,000 patients a day during COVID. I'm not going to dwell on the cash flow other than to say we have a strong balance sheet and we have planned investment into future growth. And this is really important. It's taking our gains of the last 2 years and leveraging that to get into those bigger European and US markets. So the funding is from existing cash. It's also from intended or expected future cash flow, expansion into US markets. There's new products that are coming through, which is important because the new products are our ink in the printer and ink model. So we do have instruments, which I'll get to, but more products is obviously revenue generating. The funds will also be used for additional regulatory clearances, the launch of the products, bolstering our internal capabilities, improving our technology, which we're very passionate about, and we're building a sample to result instrument, which I'll tell you more about. Sorry if I just blinded someone, I pressed the wrong button. If you'll indulge me, I do want to tell you about 3-base. As I said, we're incredibly proud of it. I sometimes debate whether I should or shouldn't, but I would very much like to tell you about it so you can understand what's different about genetic signatures. It's a molecular test, so we do detect the genetic signature, the DNA or the RNA of the organism directly. you would have heard of PCR during the pandemic. Now that's important because it displaces traditional testing, bacteria on an agar plate or looking down a microscope. So PCR, molecular, is considered the gold standard, and it is really good at what it does. It's highly specific and it's very sensitive. But it's less effective when you start looking for multiple organisms in the one patient samples, particularly when you need to detect multiple pathogens, but also when there are new variants or subtypes. And obviously SARS-CoV-2 is a good example of that with Delta and Omicron, etc. With some tests, couldn't detect the variants because they mutated too much, and 3-base addresses that directly. So molecular tests can be multiplexed, and that is really talking about doing those tests simultaneously. So we do that by giving more information ultimately back to the physician, and we do that in a much simpler way. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense, so I will give you a real example. And this is actual sequence. It's from human papillomavirus, which is causative agent of cervical cancer. These are 3 variants of HPV, and you can see, the DNA alphabet is A, C, G, or T. This particular variant has 2 Cs, this particular variant has none, and this one has just the 1. 3-base converts the C letter to a T letter before we detect anything. It's really that simple. But what happens is you end up with a target which is identical for all of those 3 variants. So that one test can pick up any of those 3 variants without any further modification. So I've been using a spelling example recently, and it's like US spelling compared to Australian spelling. So the Z or the S, like realise. And last night we spoke about mum, M-O-M, and M-U-M. And that's, if you were doing a word search for M-U-M, you'd miss all of the M-O-M variants and vice versa. But if there was a way to change M-O-M into M-U-M, that one test would pick up both variants, or that one question would pick up both variants of the same word. So I hope that made sense. And then our customers are the pathology labs, those high throughput labs. When you go to your collection centers, they get sent to the lab, they buy product off us, they use it on instruments generally that are Genetic Signatures branded. Again, that's the printer in the printer and cartridge model. And for them, it's fairly invisible. They get a clinical sample, they convert it to 3-base, they do the PCR, and they report out the results. But 3-base brings other advantages as well. It's obviously sensitive, specific, quick, but we've automated it. How we employ our technology in the lab is also important. There's been many great inventions that just haven't translated because they're too finicky to run or for various reasons. Ours is easy to run. It runs on standard equipment. And as I said, we're continuing our journey in automation. We've been on that journey for 10 years, so we can increase throughput even further and reduce the hands-on time that are responsible, that are required to perform these tests. So I just want to talk a little bit about syndromic testing, because the pandemic, if nothing else, has changed the way people view getting sick. It's no longer soldier on, it's you're sick, you can infect another person, you should get tested. And I think you all know, well, I'm guessing most of you had symptoms in the last 2 years, you went for a test and you were told you didn't have COVID. So that's not really reassuring, because I'm sure you thought, is the test wrong? Or if I don't have COVID, what do I actually have? And that is really the idea of multiplex testing. Make no assumptions. If you can test for 20 things, why wouldn't you test for 20 things? And certainly we had customers that were telling the patients that they had rhinovirus. It's a relatively mild virus, it'll cause the same symptoms, but the patients were reassured that they just had a mild virus. So that's what we mean by syndromic testing. It's effectively a single test, but we can identify the potential cause of those symptoms. So the doctor doesn't have to order multiple tests. It's quite efficient. So Genetic Signatures under the EasyScreen brand, we have assays for well over now 100 different organisms or pathogens, and we can detect all of the variants. So SARS-CoV-2 is a great example. I mentioned other tests can get tripped up with the mutations. Those mutations are invisible to us. That C to T change that 3-base does is the most common naturally occurring mutation. Again, a paper came out recently which showed the number of mutations that have come up, most of which, the 90% plus, are invisible to Genetic Signatures and our assays. So with those tests, we can combine them to make a syndromic test kit, which can then be used on a single patient specimen. So obviously the organisms we're looking for in suspected gastroenteritis is very different to those that cause respiratory illness. There is some overlap, but generally they're quite distinct. So the excitement for us is that the revenue that I've been talking about has come primarily from these top two kits. They're tests for respiratory and gastro, again, each testing for multiple organisms at the same time. We have tests that are coming through and some have regulatory approvals for STI and antimicrobial resistance, which I spoke about. But we're very excited because we have these 5 products that are still coming through the development process. Some of these are already revenue generating. Our test for flavivirus, mosquito-borne diseases is in use in Kenya. And we're focused on getting these through and getting the regulatory requirements so we can sell. The US, we've identified an unmet need, so we're very much focused on getting our first application into the FDA. We've identified an unmet need which really looks at detection of enteric protozoans, or parasites that are in your gut. The traditional method is looking down a microscope and identifying these cysts. It's inefficient. They're usually a cost center. The reimbursement's very low, and they're not very sensitive. And we've devised a kit that picks up the top 8, and we've been told by the key opinion leaders of the world that this would replace this traditional method. The trial's been recruited, and it will be our first easy screen product in the US. And the reimbursement code is $263 US. So they'll be able to go from an inefficient cost center to a sensitive, rapid profit center. We're already underway with some of the launch there. We've got webinars on our website. 2 out of 3 have been published. Sales and marketing team direct in the US, warehousing facilities. We're excited to have our first 3-base product through the US and more to come. In terms of recent events, we did announce recently we've completed recruitment of the clinical trial for the US application. And that means the patients are recruited, we're analyzing those results and doing some further testing, and we hope to submit that to the FDA in the next few months. An independent publication has come out looking at our test for antimicrobial resistance, or the superbugs, and their conclusion, independently done in France, was that we showed excellent biological performance for the 5 most common causes of antibiotic resistance. Recently, we've expanded our customer base to include Western Australia, which was very welcome. It was the one state that we hadn't been in yet, and we now have two sites in Western Australia trialling our kits. And we recently achieved Health Canada registration for the enteric protozoan kit, which is the kit that's going through FDA. So in terms of growth initiatives, we're focused on leveraging our experience here in Australia to grow those international sales. We're driving the adoption of 3-base assays, and we're building that franchise in the US. We're building our test menu. Menu is everything. The more tests the more organisms we can identify, the better. It really does change the way patients are treated and diagnosed. And we've embedded 3-base technology into customer workflows. And that's really important because it means as we release new tests, they're already primed to use it. So I've listed a couple of the syndromic kits already. We're always improving our technology. We've developed a saliva-based protocol for COVID. I know lots of people don't like the knitting needle into their brain, and we're focused on building a new instrument. This is a custom instrument, 3-base specific, where the end user literally puts a patient sample into the instrument and it does the rest. It'll do the PCR and it'll report the results. So I'll just finish on those milestones that we expect in the short term. That is filing of our FDA application. We're continuing to bolster the teams in the UK and Europe. We're initiating our next FDA trial, and that's well advanced, the preparation for that. Obviously, as I said, focused on new test technology improvements and that next generation instrument. And we always like to keep the market informed through quarterly sales updates and also progress reports. So I'm over time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'm taking my life in my hands for this next presentation because I really don't know if what I advertise is going to materialize. But nonetheless, ActivePort is an Australian company delivering networking software that streamlines complex technology for the IT and telecommunications industry. Karim, Nejaim, the Managing Director and CEO of ActivePort Group, and is a senior technology executive with 25 years experience, most recently at Telstra as Executive Director of Product Engineering, and previously Group Vice President in the Singtel Group, working with Optus in Australia. Did I get that right? Are you the person?
Good. I'm from ActivePort and my name is Karim.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Please make him welcome.
That's not the way they are. I know the waiting. There is much gap at start of the fourth question done. Here, from there than an ActivePort is that we're one of the companies that's going to bounce. We're one of the companies that's going to bounce out of depression. You'll see in a moment that we're having success in Australia, but most of them overseas. I've been, as I said, 25 years in technology and IT. I was 16 years at Office, where I finished as group vice president for the engineering, but also in Singapore. Then headed up to Telstra, where I ran product engineering. Telstra in Australia, with 1,500 people working in my team. And you might say, why on earth help to make 1,500 people to build products? It's because it's extremely complex. There's a belief that you put out a bunch of mobile phone towers, I'll put a bunch of iPhones, voila, you're a mobile. It doesn't work like that. At the heart of what ActivePort does is simplification of all of the technology that's out there. I'll go through that in a moment. Now, being a technologist, I love this thing here and talking about network functional virtualization, software-defined networking, etc. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start with our numbers. So this is what we look like a year post this. You'll see two sets of numbers up here. On the right-hand side, to list and to get our product moving, we pull 4 or 5 managed service providers together. They've been growing strong in their revenue, about 8% quarter on quarter, or about 35% for the year. That's the left-hand graph. On the right-hand side, you see what we're all about, and that's our software revenue. The little percentage at the bottom on the left-hand side is the percentage contribution of our software revenue to our total revenue. As you can see, we're growing in 100% quarter on quarter in our software revenue since the beginning of our listing last October. The main point for me then is we're moving out of startup and into scale. We don't build network, we build software. Now, these are our points of presence around the world. Now, these are coordination points for our software. This is the number of customers we have today. This is the number of customers we will have by the end of the financial year. Okay? That's our point of presence. That's the customers we have now. That's the customers we will have deployed by the end of the financial year. And you'll notice we're starting to get a cluster into Africa, the Middle East, and into India and Asia. That is where most of the demand for our software is coming from. Now, you've seen the numbers, you understand what we're on about, but where did we come from and what are we actually trying to do? What is it we produce? This is actually my point. Technology isn't great until a customer says it. You've all experienced what Apple has done. You've all experienced what Amazon has done. And what these companies have done is taken this incredibly complicated technology environment and made it extremely simple. Whether it's on your smartphone, whether it's buying things from Amazon, we are doing exactly the same thing in global networking and technology. So what we're aiming at is enhancing productivity, lowering operational costs, and creating new revenue streams. So we're running a telecommunications company anywhere in the world, and you're given the opportunity to reduce costs and drive revenue simultaneously, you will take it. So at the heart of what we do is we produce a single pane of glass. That single pane of glass can talk to any technology with a software. Now, the difficulty for somebody who hasn't been in technology for decades is understanding what the heck that means. But if you think about buying something off Amazon, there is an awful lot going on with that. There's a whole bunch of vendors selling jeans, selling cars, selling technology, but it's all being curated and orchestrated. It's all being created in one place so you can manage it. That's what we do. With Cisco here to manage it from our software. Amazon, billing system, cloud, all from one interface. So instead of having 10 different systems to manage 10 different types, you need one. Once you've got a powerful tool like ours, you can apply it to a whole bunch of different areas. Software-defined network working refers to building networks and software globally. Using our software, you can build a network between Tokyo and Dallas in 8 seconds. We produce networking software. We produce orchestration software. That's the example I was giving you about dragging everything into one place and managing it end to end. So we have one particular exciting company called Nejaim that we sell to, who's gone into cloud gaming. And I'll go through some numbers for you in a moment, but Nejaim are selling 20 telecommunications. We've rolled in our software, and if you total up the number of customers inside those 20 telcos, it's a billion. So we've got access to a massive market, and we're growing, as I showed, internationally. But the areas of growth in the more traditional, you see there, the software networking is growing at 70%. More about 1 billion to 30 billion. And you hear more and more and more about cloud and cloud networking. That's where we play as well. This is how we charge. We charge monthly recurring, really simple. If you use our networking software, it's around about $60 per month. If you use our orchestration capability, it's around about $15 per month. Everything you orchestrate, every network you build, you pay for life. So grow month on month. We're seeing a bunch of customers and saying, hey, we'd like to give you all the cost over 3 years up front. That's fine with me. Paying up front, that's brilliant. That's what our model looks like. That's how we generate revenue month on month. We sell through managed service partners. We sell with gaming providers, and we also have direct sales. So we have a wholesale. We're enabling everybody to use our software. It's managed service provider, telco, IT department, or an enterprise. But this is the slide that I'll spend a few seconds on to give you an idea of. We have a large customer in Nejaim. We're selling to more than 20 telcos globally. That's putting our software into those 20 telecommunications companies. And as I said, the total number of customers for those companies is a billion. For every customer that Nejaim gets, we get licensing revenue. We have the deal platform that really well in the startup. That has a business model a little bit like Megapix. What ActivePort software does for Lightstream is that it's the front end of their business. For any customer of Lightstream, Lightstorm, that wants to buy a Lightstorm product, it goes through our software in order to do so. Lightstorm are funded by ActivePort Capital, presently in India, heading into Indonesia, and then heading east and west of the Middle East. As I said, it's a model a little bit like Nejaim. Nejaim is limited in a 25 million population. Lightstorm is 1.2 million. We've seen take-up outside of telco, we do some direct sales. We are super popular in Africa. We now have 3 African banks, 4 African banks. But electricity is going to be the biggest power provider in the big are rolling out with now. To connect all of their power and connect all of their offices. We're not exactly sure how they count, but we're extremely glad they did. So we're getting utility providers working with us. Lightstorm, because they can drop 5 different software providers and just you're going to say, it sounds like a great problem, the CEO and MD of ActivePort, but I'm in the process of working out how I'm going to service Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam and all out. Because I've got to grow the business internationally. At the same time, we're making cash, we're making our revenues, it's been covered all comes together at the time. So what I like to say, or what the chairman likes to say, we've got to quickly move out of the startup and move into the scale-up, because for some of our whether they be telco, whether they be enterprise, whether they be others, in region, in time zone, and in language. That means India, so that's what I mean when I say that we're moving from startup. Now, our software came into creation about 5 years ago. Middleton, a CTO, dreaming. And that dream is to make global telco, global networking, using global technology as simple as it possibly can be. If he had his way, all we would need to do for enterprise is run quickly to a wall. That's what we're doing. That's where the smart solvers start. But what we're seeing is that take up on a global basis across IT, telco, and enterprise, which is going to fuel our growth into the future. And I hope to be able to stand in front of a group of people and say to my showing that revenue growth has continued to keep going between 150 and 100% quarterly, and also we are not far, I hope, in this year, which again will be able to give us knowledge and smartphone and all of that. So we're ATV and sitting outside. Please don't mind. Thank you so much.
Just a reminder that at the end of sessions today, we will have our panel session. And you can actually participate if you've got a question for any of our panel members by sending it on text to Jackson. All right. Next presentation. Findi Chairman Nicholas Smedley is an experienced investment banker and M&A advisor. He's got 14 years experience at UBS and KPMG. He's worked on M&A transactions in the UK, Hong Kong, China, and Australia, with transactions ranging from 9 billion defense of WMC resources to investment of 65 million into catch.com.au. currently oversees investments in the property, aged care, technology, and medical technology space. Key areas of expertise include M&A, debt structuring, corporate governance, and innovation. He's executive chairman of Respiri Limited and non-executive director of AD1 Holdings. Please make him welcome Nicholas Smedley.
Thank you very much. Here to talk to you today about Findi Group and the exciting prospects of the business since we've acquired 100% of the Indian assets. Let's take you through. So Findi is an ASX-listed fintech company with ATM payments across India. We manage approximately 17,000 ATMs. We currently have a market cap of 15.4 million as at November 2, 2022. And you'll see that our revenue delivered for FY22 was 44 million. Our EBITDA last year was 6 million, but most importantly, we've provided revenue guidance, which I'll go into more detail, of 13 to 14 million for this financial year. And I note that our financial year ends on 31 March and revenue forecast of 47 to 50 million. So if you put your investment hat on with a market cap of 15.4 versus a forecast EBITDA of 13 to 14 million, quite a attractive investment multiple. The management and directors of the business also clearly believe in the forecast of the business and the prospects. There was a recently completed $2.8 million placement, of which management and board participated 550,000 of that number. And the placement was done at nil premium to the 15-day VWAP. Fellow directors, Simon Vitullo, Jason Tipman, based out of Queensland, and our executive management team, Monish and Deepak, based in India, where we have a little over 600 staff. As I said previously, revenue for last year was 47 to 50 million for our forecast, which is a 6 to 13% increase year on year. EBITDA forecast is 13 to 14 million, which is a 100% year on year increase. Most importantly, for a micro cap company, our EBITDA to free cash flow last year was 61%, and EBITDA margins of 25%. We had a significant win in the last few weeks that were announced to the ASX. One of our largest contracts, which is State Bank of India, which accounts for just under 4,000 ATMs, was extended. The one thing that we can disclose is that was not included in our full year forecast. This contract originally ended on the 31st of December of this year. So for the final quarter of this year, there was no inclusion in that contract. So we've given revenue up guidance effectively of an additional $8 to $10 million of revenue. And you can obviously extrapolate our EBITDA margins of about 25%. Findi is an interesting business. It's more from a business 2 years ago, which was in cybersecurity. Our predecessors sold that business and we were left with a 25% interest in what is now known as Findi or TSI at the time in India. We had a transaction in February of this year where we acquired the final 70 or the other 75% of this business. We now own 100%. At that point in time, we've also done a rebrand with Findi going on the ASX in September of this year. Now, the most important thing about the business for us is it's a massive market in India, 32 trillion in currency in circulation, and slides coming up will show that cash in circulation has increased significantly, as well as percentage of cash in transactions. We have long contracted revenues. We won a significant contract with the Central Bank of India in the middle of this year. That is a 5-year contract, which forecasts to double our revenues over the 5 years. We've just, as said, got an extension with the State Bank of India for an additional 12 months, and with that to be retendered over the next 12 months, which be very well placed to secure. Last year, we had 6 million in pro forma EBITDA. This year, that will be 13 to 14 million EBITDA. Very strong management team in India, as said, with 600 staff across 4 city locations and in 20 states across India. And most importantly, very strong cash flow positive business, with EBITDA to free cash flow conversion of 61%. Last year, we managed or transacted 1.5 trillion Indian rupees across our ATM network and digital payments businesses. We had more than 1 billion individual transactions at our ATMs. As said, we have ATMs across 20 states, and we work with over 20 institutions across India. 17,000 ATMs of those which are managed and owned by Findi. And our digital payments business has more than 7,000 merchants and growing. One of the biggest things in investing in India that you have to look at, that we had to do as a management team, is cash is a very different situation in India. It's not going anywhere in any time soon. The economy itself has only 15% of the population that pays tax. So therefore, 85% of the economy actually operates in cash. For us as well, we're a full service operator. We're there for first line maintenance, ATM supply, managed services, as well as white label and ATM management, e-surveillance, payment processing, and utility services. So we are a one-stop shop for where we manage outsource ATMs that we also do ourselves. As stated, our managed services business accounts for about 90% of the business, but most importantly, our Findi Pay business, which is our digital payments platform, represents 10% and is growing strongly. As stated, we have more than 7,000 merchants that are on that platform now, which is growing on a quarter-by-quarter basis of about 10 to 15%. As I was alluding to earlier, India is a cash economy. Over the last 5 years, since 2017, there's been a CAGR, or compound annual growth rate, of 16%, which has meant that cash in circulation has more than doubled. The number of ATMs that have been managed or deployed in India have also gone up about 20% over that same time period. And most importantly, the average ATMs per 100,000 people is only 17. The global average is 43. And in an economy like Australia, just by point of reference, there's over 100 to 1 on that same ratio. So 100 ATMs per 100,000 people in Australia. So very small penetration at the moment, with that looking to grow over the coming years. E-commerce is also a very unique proposition in India. In Australia, obviously, you'd log on to Amazon and order your goods, pay by credit card, and it'd be delivered to your home shortly thereafter. In India, 80% of e-commerce transactions are actually completed by cash. The actual payment from the end user to the merchant is facilitated by a merchant network, of which we have 7,000, and paid in cash. Very different nuance compared to the Australian market. And that's because of the, how can I put it, infrastructure in place in India. We can't see that dynamic changing anytime soon. Key strategic initiatives, as I've touched on, 5-year contract with Central Bank of India, which was won earlier this year. That will place an additional 3,175 ATMs that we manage. Most importantly, that contract is for 5 years. It has guaranteed minimum revenues on a month-by-month basis. So there is no cash burn, cash flow positive from month 1 for every new ATM that's deployed. Rollout has commenced and will be completed December, January of this year, of which then there'll still be 5 years of contract life. As also stated, that will give us an additional annualized revenue once fully deployed of $25 to $30 million. That's on top of the forecast guidance already provided. We're also looking to transition into white label ATMs. Part of the capital raise that was done just a couple of weeks ago was to shore up the balance sheet position of the company to ensure that we met the regulatory requirements for the Indian authorities for that application, which is now underway and would be expected to be awarded sometime in this financial year for us. Payments and digital banking solutions is the future of the business. We look at ourselves as a self-funded fintech. We have a great cash cow and operating business from the ATM network that we currently have. That free cash flow is being put into our digital payments business, which, as stated, is growing significantly and will be the future of the business as we transition. If there's any questions, I'll be outside, so please feel free to come and speak to me. Thank you very much.
Delta Drone International Limited is an Australian-based multinational drone-focused data service and technology solutions provider with operations in Australia, South Africa, Ghana, Namibia, and Israel. CEO Chris Clark has over 10 years' experience in the mining and tech industries and has started and grown businesses across Africa, while most recently expanding offerings in Australia. He's passionate about entrepreneurship and developing the drone industry across Delta Drone's international global operations, and especially to make technology more accessible and useful for enterprise companies. Please welcome Chris Clark.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for having me. I know it's late in the afternoon, so I'll make sure not to drone on for too long, but oh, sorry, I thought we're nearly at the end. I'm here to tell you a great story about our little business. You know, it's just so exciting about the space, about where drone technology has come from and where it's going. And I know many of you sort of, when you're thinking about drone technology, you're thinking about these, you know, small little consumer drones, something that you're buying off the shelves. And that's, you know, I mean, while that may be where many of us sort of started the business, it's definitely not where Delta Drone is today. Essentially, Delta Drone and its business model is a B2B tech services business currently, where it takes these large-scale enterprise survey-grade drones and operates them on mine sites or agriculture sites and flies them every single day. So we're supplying hardware, software, the technology, and if necessary, the labor to really help mines in these very fast-moving areas capture their sites on a daily basis to make these decisions based on the geospatial outputs. We're currently sitting just sort of, as you can see, just with about a 7 million market cap, but our revenues really reflect something of a very interesting story, because all our customers are these large, big mining customers where we've signed up these long-term contracts. So we've brought in these metrics, which I'll go over shortly, are already around our recurring revenue, which you can see is just 2 million, and we signed up a new contract as well, bumping that to just over about 2.2 million on an annually recurring basis. So what really makes Delta Drone unique, and why is it special in its unique space? If you consider the mining environment and our natural competitors, really the traditional way to capture geospatial data was either by satellite, manned aircraft, and now what drone technology has allowed is to allow for this high frequency flying lower at a higher resolution. And the competitive edge versus the manned aircraft and the satellite is that you can get underneath the clouds and you're doing it a lot more frequently compared to only once a week or once a month. And where that is very special is on these very fast moving environments, such as mine sites, which are changing every single day. We've built up these great relationships with big customers like Newmonts, the South 32s, the Anglo-Americans, traditionally focused in the survey environment, so helping our customers determine how much they're digging out of the ground. But we've moved further into other applications such as security, and now focusing on other applications such as full-on drone autonomy, which will allow our customers to get a higher frequency of data by not even having a drone pilot at all. So you'll merely be able to install drone in a box within your mining site, and during the day, the drone will be able to capture and do the survey volume during the day, and at night do perimeter patrolling at night for security purposes. Our focus has always been in the mining and the agriculture space, because this is really one of the fastest sort of growing areas for drone technology. To this date, BHP has trained over 800 drone pilots. South 32's got 600 of them, and Glencore's got 200 drone pilots. There is an incremental need and demand for what drones produce. And again, customers are not getting into the drone industry just to only buy the drones. They're getting it for the data. That's the key most important part of what actually the drones can produce, not the physical drone hardware itself. So we've got really a team that's positioned well to not only capitalize on the African market, where I'm originally from South Africa, We've also starting to, our main focus is now on the Australian market. We've been here for over 2 years. We did a reverse takeover with the Israeli tech hardware business, which we divested in January this year. And we've got a bit of cash in the bank to see us through for our short-term goals of really getting to that break-even point. Our focus has always been around about driving the value of the business, doing what is counts, or what do the customers need on a frequent basis to really meet their sort of needs. Sorry, one back. So our presence, as we said, is sort of expanded. We've got about 60 staff in Africa and about 14 staff in Australia. About 30% of our revenues come locally as well. We signed up Red 5 earlier this year, and it's just about taking these customers who are, let's say, for example, like the BHPs, who've got 800 drone pilots, paying very expensive engineers to be flying every single year. And we're merely saying, our operating model gives you what you need faster and cheaper as well, because there's not a decrease in demand for the drone data. There's only more needs for drones applied on site. But they want to now, instead of the customers now operating drones themselves, they're more focused on outsourcing that, and they're rather focusing on the analytics of what the drones produce. A little bit about in terms of where we're taking our business. So as mentioned, so just over a third of the revenue coming out of Australia now, with 40% of the business focused on pure recurring revenue. So these are contracted revenues, long-term contracts with these large mining customers where they're signed up for more than a year. A majority of our customers are focused sort of on this 3-year deal, where customers are getting a lot of value because they're looking at the life of the mine saying, we've got 15, 20 years. It's data that they're always going to need every single day. And we're just offering a competitive commercial model that fits within their needs. Looking at the recurring revenue and our TCV, this has been a major part and focus of our business and what separates us from other drone services companies. A lot of other drone companies will only focus on selling ad hoc projects or selling just the hardware. We're doing the hardware, the software, the consulting, and all the services within and even training within our full sphere of what we offer. So some customers who don't necessarily want to get a drone service, it's not a problem. We can sell you the drone hardware and also do the training as well. So really kind of offering to their full sort of market. But our core focus has always been about signing up these long-term contracts, which is steadily growing. And a lot of you sort of involved and know with mining companies, it's quite tough to get onto a mining company, but once you're on, you're quite sticky. And as long as you keep sort of ticking those boxes and delivering what you need, we find we keep coming back and the customers are been renewing. So our very first customer was BHP when they were in thermal coal over 10 years ago. And they since then divested into South 32, and now it's Sereti Resources back in Johannesburg. And we've been with them for over 10 years, because as long as the mine is open, you're always going to need that drone survey data. Speaking to our quarterly results, our revenue continues to sort of drive up slowly as well. This past quarter was a bit of a flat one compared to other prior quarters, generally just due to the sort of decrease in the project work. But our revenue, our contract revenue remained consistent as well. We're really focused on using the cash that we have on the terms of the reserves from this divestment to see us through to the end of next year. But really the story for us is about using those opportunities that we're having to really convert into new revenue streams. We don't have a shortage of opportunities. It's really about picking the ones that are going to give us this long-term benefit. So what you'll generally will find in our revenue mix, and I'll bring that up in a minute, is that you're finding customers start off on a POC, on very much ad hoc work, and that slowly converts over a 6 to 12-month period into those long-term contracts. Because the way that we build up our model is we don't try to be everything to anyone. We've got the tech and the skills in there to essentially be a sort of tick the 80-20 rule, is that we want to focus on doing what people are looking for 80% of the time and just customizing that last 10% and then standardizing that workflow to produce consistent results. Sort of as mentioned, so we got the cash and the revenue receipts as well. We sort of keeping an eye on those. Definitely having a much better quarter this year as well, as some of those other projects sort of pick up on the ad hoc side as well. And we're looking sort of at bringing a lot more a software focus. I kind of put us at a stage of we're sort of like the index of the drone world at the moment, sort of in this transition of traditionally coming out of this mining services business, but really adding a lot more software as the selling point is what we're seeing customers are needing to make those geospatial decisions. So 40% of the revenue is contract-based, and we really got, what's interesting in terms of this breakdown is that you've got this really kind of sweet spot of customers who are not in the contract, who've got not a dedicated contract, but who've been with us for a very long time. So that 34% sort of piece of the burger there, on sort of other sides between the patty, that 34% is really this ad hoc work where we're getting consistently focusing on things like agriculture projects, doing plant counting, doing sheep counting, ad hoc sort of survey work as well. But a lot of the customers have also been with us for a long time, and we classify them within that 26% category. Where we're going to be taking this business and where do we see the market in terms of drone technology growing? We're very much aware that our original core market is always about focus around the capture side, and we've already perfected the business today about how to get that at scale. So we can very quickly, within 30 to 40 days from the start of a new contract, deploy to site the technology, the people, what we need to do to onboard a particular contract. So we've perfected the model of data capture, and we can do this quicker than even what manned aircraft can do. And essentially what we've done is then built the workflow of taking all this raw data and being able to quantify it and report it into a format that the customers actually need to make their decisions, be it in a survey or an engineering or even an agriculture sense. And what we're starting to focus on is a lot more autonomy, is how to get that capture element done a lot quicker and integrating that with cloud-based software platforms to produce the reports, not within 5 days, but within 2. So we're again pivoting the business in the front end, and this doesn't change any of our core operations. It's just about the way in which we position ourselves to customers and how we describe in the products and what we do. So a lot of the information that we're capturing, if you think about it, we've got these long range, really sophisticated pieces of equipment which are capturing very large areas. We're only a handful of operators in the country to operate what they call beyond visual line of sight. The complexities around getting this kind of licensing locally is it takes a really long time, and it gives us this sort of builds the moat for us to operate these larger pieces of equipment. And when you're capturing the entire mine site and digitizing the day, the idea is that you're then cutting this up and sort of producing data for each individual department. So you're producing the data at a lot lower cost rate than what the mines can do it themselves. But then you're also adding on top of that the insights and the information that they need to make their decisions. So we're all the way from doing using drone technology from the environmental all the way even to doing tailings monitoring. So whatever kind of different sensors we're putting on, from thermal to multispectral sort of sensors, we sort of encapsulate the entire sort of workflow of mining, and allowing each one of those individual departments to quantify the problems and the risks that they're experiencing on site. Where we're developing the model is, so at the bottom there, we sort of speak about this data acquisition side. This is what we've got down and what we've been doing really well for the last 10 years. Long range capabilities, drones provide a higher resolution than manned aircraft, and we do it a lot faster and quicker than what satellites and manned aircraft can do. In the last 2 years, we've developed on our AI and recognition models. So this is essentially training up detectors to detect any kind of asset, be it from georeferencing weeds for precision agriculture, to counting the heads of cattle and sheep, to even quantifying any kind of other risks that you're seeing on a mine. And essentially, we're doing this through an integrator approach, which is some technology we will just bring together off the market, and put that with the right kind of software platforms to deliver the result for the customer. So it's a short lead time to market for the products in which we build. Because essentially where the customers want is we're turning pixels into profits. Customers don't actually want to own drones. They don't want to operate drones. What they just need at the end of the day is a number on an Excel spreadsheet. And it's all about how to do that efficiently and quickly for them to quantify the results. We bring this all together because we have surveyors, general sort of mining engineers, and as well as even traditional manned aircraft pilots who we've trained up to operate these complex pieces of equipment. And really just again focused on producing these automated KPI reports on a weekly basis. Quickly, just the addressable market. So really focus on those very high moving areas and the areas, the environments that are changing on a very frequent basis. And our growth pathway is really about focusing on those customers that are really about within the Australian market, growing on our current sort of base there as well, and looking at any kind of acquisition opportunities on deploying our sort of financial commercial models that we perfected over time. I think I'm out of time, but if you have any questions, I'll be outside as well. Thank you for your time.
Now, before our final presentation, just a reminder to you that we will have a panel session following this presentation. The panel will comprise Joe Durack from Lynx, who's also a sponsor, Ben Williamson from Fresh, also a sponsor, and Brian Liedman from Oncosil, who gave us a presentation earlier. If you have a question for any of them, we'd suggest you make a note of it now so that you can ask it during the panel session. And if you are attending off-site, you can put your questions through to Jackson and we will be able to get to them. So our final presentation, I introduced it earlier prematurely. I'll do it again. Jennifer Chow is the CEO and MD of Chimeric Therapeutics. She's a cell therapy pioneer and expert with experience developing and commercializing FDA-approved CAR T cell therapies. She also has experience leading the commercial development for more than 15 pipeline cell therapies, and she joined Chimeric from Kite Pharmaceuticals, where she was the head of global marketing, analytics, and commercial operations, and prior to that was global cell therapy commercial lead at Celgene Corporation. Please welcome Jennifer Chow.
Thank you so much. I think my intro was about 15 minutes, so I may not have much time left. First and foremost, thank you to everybody for remaining for the very last presentation of the day. I very much appreciate your time. I'm going to introduce you to Chimeric Therapeutics. For those of you that are not familiar with us, we are a clinical stage cell therapy company focused in oncology. And so clinical stage really meaning that we have now moved out of mouse models and actually are in clinical trials with our assets. Our mission at Chimeric Therapeutics is right here. We are committed to bringing the promise of cell therapy to life for more patients with cancer. And for many, I get a lot of questions. What does this actually mean? And I'll give you a little perspective of what this means for me and my team. I've worked in oncology drug development for my entire career. Evolution of cancer therapies has been fairly straightforward. We started back in the 40s with chemotherapy. Chemotherapy was non-targeted therapy. We just gave you toxic therapy, hoping to kill anything in its path. We moved on in the 90s, and we were very excited with the introduction of targeted therapies. And so for the first time, we were actually targeting the tumor that we were trying to get to. So this was the introduction of targeted therapies. In 2010, we congratulated ourselves with the introduction of immunotherapies because for the first time, we were actually using a patient's own immune system to attack their cancer. And with each of these steps, we've improved the outcomes for patients with cancer. We've gone from chemotherapies, and what you're looking at is very simply at the top left, 100% of patients are alive over the course of time with cancer, how they pass away. Chemotherapy had minimal impact against that. Targeted therapies improve short-term survival more than long-term survival. And then we saw long-term survival improve a bit with immunotherapies. In 2017, I worked on the approval of the very first CAR T-cell therapy. CAR T-cell therapies were actually the first time we had combined targeting. We were targeting both the tumor we were trying to get to, as well as a person's immune system and how we were going to leverage their immune system to get to their specific type of cancer. And what we saw on the left-hand side, you see PET scans of patients that received CAR T-cell therapies. And on the right hand, you see what all of a sudden we were seeing in terms of outcomes. We were actually seeing patients stay alive longer, both in the short term and in the long term. Patients that received CAR T-cell therapies in very early clinical trials have been followed for more than 10 years. We now know that those patients that became complete responders, so their cancer completely went away with their CAR T-cell therapy in early days, remain cancer-free. That led to a scientific publication earlier this year where we were able to finally conclude we can cure certain types of cancer using these therapies. So the mission for us is really all about this. It is about going beyond the existing types of cancer that we know we can cure with these therapies and bringing these types of outcomes to more patients with cancer. Our team is really where we started with this. And our team has worked in this cell therapy market, which is anticipated to be the fastest growing area in oncology drug development over the course of the next decade. What you see here is in 2020, the market was worth about $1 billion. By 2030, it's anticipated to be worth over $20 billion. And you can see the growth at 31% CAGR. Compare that to how we expect oncology drug development to generally grow at 8%. So very significant growth in this area is anticipated over the course of the next 10 years, really because of what we're seeing with these outcomes. I mentioned my team, and this is really the starting spot for Chimeric. It is one of the areas that makes us incredibly different. I have a small team of people that all have extensive experience and expertise in this area. We come from the top cell therapy companies in the world, and we've launched over 4 of the 6 approved CAR T-cell therapies that exist in the United States today. So very much a group of people that have shown that they know how to get this done and can do this successfully. The team has then brought together what we believe is both an industry-leading innovative pipeline and portfolio, as well as a diversified one. What we've done is we've consciously set out a strategy to bring together the best that exists in terms of science out there. Our assets are novel in design, so we are not trying to follow and be the 10th something to market. We really are looking to be the first to market with our assets. We use both NK and T cells in our assets, and we use what's known as autologous and allogeneic cell sources. And what that means is either it's a therapy that is derived directly from cells inside one patient, or it's therapy that is derived from cells that come from a healthy donor. And this is what our pipeline looks like today. This pipeline actually differentiates us in the cell therapy space across multiple companies that are working in the space. And you can see by leveraging NK and T cells, by leveraging auto and allo therapies, our portfolio is very differentiated. I'll give you some quick highlights of where we are because I started by telling you we're a clinical stage company. With that comes clinical data. So I'll give you some insight into how we're actually doing with our assets as we've moved into clinic with them. I'll start with our NK cell therapies. And so these are what we refer to as allogeneic therapies or off-the-shelf therapies. What you see drawn out here very simply is how they work. We get cells from a healthy donor. We take those cells, we isolate the NK cells, we engineer them, we freeze them in bags, so multiple bags. We put them in a freezer until a patient actually requires them. And so they all start from a healthy donor. Our NK cell platform is from Case Western University in Ohio. This is where it was developed. It was actually developed with the ability and with the forethought to overcome some of the challenges that are inherent in NK cell development. And you see many of them listed here. All the starting at how we use healthy universal donors, all the way through to how do we actually manufacture the cells, make sure we have enough cells, the cells are staying alive, so that they can actually be effective for cancer patients. And this work was published in Nature a number of years ago. We took all of that and we moved into a phase 1 clinical trial, which you see highlighted here. It was a small dose escalation trial. And what we were able to set out, our initial objective was for safety. We were able to establish safety in all 9 patients that were treated across the 3 different dose levels, and able to establish there was no GVHD, which is graft versus host disease. Essentially what that means is I'm giving you somebody else's cells. We want to know you're not going to reject them. So this did not happen, which was a great thing. We were also able to establish persistence and expansion, which basically just means the cells were staying alive long enough to do their job in a patient. And then came the important pieces. Although this was very small, early stage trial, what we saw was very impressive activity signals, particularly in the blood cancer patients. 3 blood cancer patients were treated. All 3 had acute myeloid leukemia, which is a very severe type of leukemia. The outcome is generally not good, particularly after patients try their first round of therapy. Here, what we saw was all 3 patients had a response to the therapy that came out over 100 days. And very notably, we've had 1 patient who actually has had a complete response to therapy. So essentially, this was a young 33-year-old woman. She went into the trial with acute myeloid leukemia. She tried every other available therapy to her. Nothing had worked. That's how she wound up on the clinical trial. She took the cells on day 0 and 14, started to have a response by day 28, so 1 month in. By 3 months in, she had a complete response. Complete response, meaning there were no more visible signs or no more detectable signs of cancer in her blood. It was gone. We actually, at 15 months, this was published, so that was earlier, last year this was published. And in talking to her clinician a number of weeks ago, we actually know this patient remains in complete remission. So her cancer has not come back. She's now 26 months out. So this has been an incredible story with our therapy. This has actually led to some very rapid interest and development in this, particularly in these NK cells. What we've seen is, although we loved the response that the 1 young woman had, we actually know we want all patients to have that. So what we looked for was what could we do to our cells to be able to enhance the efficacy so more patients were having a response like the young woman. We've put it in combination with an agent called vectisertib, and very rapidly this has been moved into a new clinical trial that's been approved by the FDA and is already open at Case Western. We plan to treat 12 patients across the course of the next year, and assuming that we see an enhancement of the efficacy signal, we will be moving from here towards a registration pathway and commercialization of this combination. So a lot of excitement going on around these NK cells. In our pipeline, we also have CAR T cell therapies. CAR T cell therapies essentially are cell therapies that are derived from a patient's own cells. So this is where we take the cells out of a patient, we ship them off for engineering and manufacturing, and then we send them right back to the same patient. And that patient gets those engineered cells as a CAR T cell therapy. Our first CAR T cell therapy had great preclinical work. This is where we were able to establish, we believed it was going to have a lot of promise as it moved into clinic. It's now in a phase 1 clinical program at City of Hope Hospital in California. And what you see here is highlighted some of the very early results from that. Now that study is not yet complete, so we are waiting for more data, particularly as patients get higher dose levels. But at the very early dose levels, we were already seeing that 70%, so this was 5 out of 7 patients, were achieving disease control, which means their glioblastoma, and anybody that's ever known anybody that has been diagnosed with glioblastoma knows what a deadly disease that is. Glioblastoma had actually stopped all growth for this period of time. So again, we're very anxious to see how this one continues as we dose escalate. Our second CAR T cell therapy, so this again is a cell therapy we make from a patient's own cells, is a CDH17 CAR T cell therapy. This particular CAR T cell therapy comes from the University of Pennsylvania, which actually is responsible for probably a lot of the worldwide interest and acclaim around cell therapies. The University of Pennsylvania team under Dr. Carl June were the first to cure patients with these therapies. This is preclinical data. Their preclinical data was published earlier this year in Nature Cancer. And the team at the University of Pennsylvania have been optimizing this asset for over a decade. We're in the final stages of readiness to get this one into clinic. We believe we'll have this in clinic next year and are very much looking forward to what this can give patients that have gastrointestinal tumors, colorectal cancer, gastric cancer, and neuroendocrine tumors. So with that, that's where we land from our portfolio and our pipeline. You can see our very rapid growth in sort of just over 18 months. We've gone from one asset, we now have 7 assets in development. We've gone from having 1 clinical trial, we now have 3 clinical trials ongoing with additional trials planned for next year. We now have 2 trials that have shown us positive signals in their early stages. And we're exploring development across 10 different types of cancer to really optimize our long-term opportunity for patients in the company. From a milestone perspective, since the beginning of the fiscal year, we've certainly already hit a number of the milestones we've set out for ourselves. Over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, there are key inflection points for us as we continue to be able to come forward with our clinical data. So lots more milestones that we are looking to achieve, very much focused on those clinical outcomes. So this really sums it up in terms of where we are today and what we believe from an investment perspective makes us an incredible investment. Significant opportunity, 7 assets in the fastest growing area of oncology drug development. 2 of those assets already demonstrating strong clinical promise. Near-term value with inflection points from clinical data over the course of the next 12 to 24 months, and a team of people that have actually done this before and have that proven expertise and experience to be able to get these assets through to commercialization. I certainly invite any questions or there's information outside if anybody has any further questions. And I thank you so much for staying with me to the end of the day and appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. And it's worth noting that Jennifer has come all the way from Canada to be with us today, and also in 2 days' time in Sydney. Perfect. Right. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Okay, now it's time to convene our panel of eminent persons, if I can use that term. And we invite you to pose